So is that recording?
That would be recording now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're
Right.
good to go.
This is the Winnitron SK. The Winnitron is it's an arcade main cabinet project focusing on indie games and indie developers. The whole idea is to try and get the indie games more into the public, get people talking about them. Yeah, so all games, once the launcher software is on there and it's all running, they're all free to play, and they're all linked over a network where all the high scores are synchronized, so your high score is not specific to the machine. I think there's about 8 of them now.
A few more than that, I think. I think there's even 10 now.
Even 10.
With more in the works, all over the world, pretty much. Lots of support from a lot of countries.
Now, this of course is not in its finished state, thereby the lack of controls and other finishing touches, but it is getting very close. There's a matter of finishing the marquee, the graphics, front bezel and glass, as well as the control deck. Other than that, it is 100% functional.
Well, hardware-wise.
Hardware-wise, yes.
Software, not quite.
We don't have the launcher software yet because we haven't found a stable place to hold it. But other than a few tweaks I made myself, it is essentially just a MAME cabinet. The computer driving it is an old Dell Precision 450 workstation. The original case was removed because it was a hunk of crap. Instead, the metal frame for the case was retained and was securely fastened to a shelf that was also added in for structural support. This cabinet was in very bad shape when we got it. Many years of neglect and water rot had done some funny things. For the old nostalgic feel of a good old 80s arcade cabinet, there is a CRT monitor. It's a 15-inch VGA compatible. Maximum resolution is I think 2048 by 1024. Don't quote me on that.
So, yeah.
It didn't quite fit in the cabinet the way we wanted with the original backing on it. That's why all its dangerous guts are exposed. For the mounting, that was accomplished by the skid plate for the bottom screwed onto this shelf, and then the monitor just slides back in, and then the 2 locking screws that would have held it onto the monitor hold the monitor into the cabinet. And there's 2 holes drilled up in here for which those screws to be removed should the monitor have to be replaced. There's a small audio amplifier from an old set of multimedia speakers with the stereo speakers up above the monitor there, and that's about it.
Want to go over the
Yeah, I'll go over that
stuff there?
So, as we were building this, we realized that wherever this is going to be, it's going to have to be turned off and turned on. And we wanted to make that as simple as possible, like an old arcade machine. Now, when an old arcade machine has a simple toggle switch. You turn it off, you turn it back on. Directly unplugging a computer from its power supply when it's running is not a nice thing. They don't like it. So, we would have to have something where you would have to turn the main power on, push the button to turn on the computer, and then it would be ready to go. And for the shutdown process, turn it off, wait for Windows to shut down, flip off the main power. And I wasn't happy with that, so I came up with a better system. All the devices other than the computer can be switched off just by basically plugging them and unplugging them. So they are controlled through a relay, which is right here. And the relay controls these 3 plugs, which is the monitor, the audio amplifier, and the marquee light. the computer is plugged into its own plug that is isolated from these circuits, that is always has power when it's plugged in. The reason for that is that the relay itself is actually controlled by 5 volts off the ATX power supply. So that way, when the computer's in standby, there's 0 volts here, and everything essentially stays off. Then once the computer is turned on, still need to do some wiring there. Once the computer is turned on, light on the relay comes on, the line power from the mains is switched. This is just this is actually just the hot switch line. Goes into here and turns these 3 outlets on. If anybody's interested in that, I will be posting a schematic as to how that works, so if you have something similar. It would also be good for any home theater setups where you have a lot of amps that you need to control. And those relays are kind of expensive. This one I picked this one up for about $45 Canadian, but your control voltage can be anything from 3 to 32 volts DC. And your load is all the way from 24 to 280 volts AC with a maximum capacity of 25 amps, which is a fair amount of current. I think this thing fully powered up maybe draws about 2. The back panel is off right now, but that's normally would be in place, and these need to be screwed in. So basically, other than some finishing work, finding a home, and fixing the power switch, she's ready to go. We have to do some doing here on the pad. The original owner was someone who was trying to make this into a main cabinet, and he had done a terrible job of hacking up this. Luckily he left the joysticks alone. But all of these holes were drilled and then not sanded, and they had burrs. He had player 1 and a player 2 start button. As you can see, he didn't center them. They're completely off. And then these 3 were, there were 6 buttons here and 6 buttons here, and they were not spaced evenly, so we cut that all out so that when we put our new piece on top of here, we can center our buttons 1 and 2. And we're still trying to decide on colors for that.
I like the red and blue.
Red and blue, I think, is good. But, yeah, and the CRT adds a nice nostalgia to it.
Even if it's not exactly what an arcade monitor would have been, it's a bit too crisp.
It's a bit, yeah. The Winnitron launcher software runs at a resolution of 1024 by 768, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is the minimum required resolution of Windows 7 now. I remember when Windows XP came out, it's like minimum resolution was 800 by 600, yep. And everybody's like, whoa! So yeah, so this monitor is much more clear, but because it's a CRT instead of an LCD, it'll look a lot cleaner, and there won't be pixeling artifacts and stuff like that.
Yeah, it should look a bit more retro than an LCD would.
An arcade monitor would have been 320 or by 240.
Yeah.
And a lot heavier. The original mounting brackets for this machine, for the arcade monitor, are still there, and this shelf kind of was just meant as a guide. It wasn't really strong enough, so we reinforced that to hold the weight of the CRT, which actually is sounding loose today.
There we go.
Alright, so we have it hooked up to power now, and if you look inside the motherboard, you can see that the standby light is on.
Where is it?
Or at least it should.
And where is the standby light now?
I don't know, it's all covered up in there with a hard drive cavity and stuff. Anyway,
somewhere in there.
Trust me, it's on. Don't worry, it's on. But nothing else is on, the computer isn't powered up yet, so we'll go and hit the switch. Spins into life, CRT clicks and crackles, audio amp light comes on, hard drive spin up, and look at that, even posts. Very slow test there. Keyboard failure, it's one of those.
Yes, of course.
No, but it still will boot, which is good. That's the other thing I didn't mention, the interface for the keyboard uses a PS2 interface and goes off a keyboard. I haven't heard that startup sound in a while.
Lovely.
So all the joypad press movements and the key presses are all interpreted as keyboard clicks. We need to get rid of that.
Easy enough.
Yeah, we'll just do some sysconfig. So once the launcher software is on here, there'll be some msconfig.exe configuring to do to make sure that it doesn't launch Explorer, which is basically what makes Windows.
Yeah.
And doesn't launch a bunch of this crap, and instead just launches the Winnitron launcher software. So that's our video update